The desert was already shimmering when the starting horn echoed across the valley. October 2015. The Great Basin Ultra, 100 miles of rock, heat, and silence for most runners. It was a test of endurance. For Lena Brooks, 29, it was redemption. 2 years after a knee injury ended her collegiate career, she was back, her bib read number 117. Her GoPro blinked red against her chest strap, recording every heartbeat of her return. The camera caught everything at first: the rhythm of feet over gravel, the glint of the sun off aluminum water bottles, the laughter of volunteers handing out orange slices at mile 20. The desert was merciless, but beautiful. Endless sagebrush rippling under a glass-bright sky, sandstone ridges melting into distance. A helicopter crew filmed from above, the runners snaking through the canyon like colored beads on a line of dust. Lena looked up once, smiling at the lens before disappearing beneath the horizon. At mile 42, she stopped at a checkpoint, logged her time, and took a quick selfie. In the photo, she's flushed but steady, eyes squinting against the light. She messages her mother through the race app, feeling strong. See you at the finish. It's the last confirmed contact. Less than 40 minutes later, her GPS tracker begins to stutter. The icon on the monitoring screen drifts half a mile off course, then freezes. At mile 43, the signal dies completely. When the next wave of runners passes that stretch, they notice only a single water bottle rolling lazily in the wind. No backpack, no footprints leading away, just a faint line in the sand where something, or someone, might have turned. By sunset, volunteers are combing the area. The wind erases their prints as fast as they make them. A mile south, a searcher finds Lena's pack wedged against a dry wash. Inside are the ordinary things of a long race: an energy bar half-eaten, her inhaler, a folded map, and one dirt-stained page torn from a small spiral journal. Across the paper, written in neat black pen, are 6 words: "The horizon isn't where it should be." The handwriting is calm, precise. No trembling letters. No panic in the spacing. It reads like observation, not distress. As if she were describing the world rearranging itself. Officials release a statement the next morning. Likely dehydration or heat stroke. Disorientation in open terrain. But the medical team notes that her vitals at the last checkpoint were perfect. She was hydrated, balanced, coherent. Her parents fly in from Oregon that night, standing by the race tent under floodlights, watching drones lift into the dark. The local news station set up cameras beside them. She knows these conditions. Her father insists. She's run desert courses before. Search teams move outward in widening circles. Every track they find leads nowhere, swallowed by the shifting sand. The temperature drops 20 degrees after sunset, the kind of cold that bites through skin still warm from the day. By morning, they've found her headband tangled in tumbleweed, her GPS strap a few yards away, the clasp still intact, as if it had been removed deliberately. At headquarters, an officer replays her GoPro footage on a loop. The final frame catches Lena jogging across an open ridge, sweat darkening the back of her shirt. The light turns strange. Not sunset, not shadow, but a color that doesn't belong anywhere between. She slows, looks over her shoulder. Her expression flickers, confusion or recognition. Then the image jumps, pixelates, and freezes. Within 24 hours, the Great Basin transforms from a race course into a search grid. Dozens of volunteers fan out with drones and ATVs, tracing dry washes and abandoned mining trails. The desert answers with silence. Reporters cluster along the highway, filming dust storms curling over the plain. The footage airs that evening, a red flare burning low in the canyon. Helicopters sweeping beams across empty ground. The echo of engines bouncing off stone. Lena's parents hold hands beside the sheriff's SUV, refusing to leave. Her mother whispers. She wouldn't run off-route. She follows the map. By nightfall, the only sound left is the wind. It moves across the sand like breath, carrying with it the faint rattle of paper, one page torn loose from somewhere unseen, fluttering until it catches against a sage branch. When rescuers find it the next morning, the ink is already fading in the heat, but the words remain visible. The horizon isn't where it should be, and as the sun rises over the basin, the desert seems to stretch a little farther than before, as if shifting itself to hide what it has taken. By nightfall, the desert swallowed her footsteps and began returning her words instead. The first week after Lena vanished turned the Great Basin into a grid of moving dots. Rescue drones, horses, and people in bright vests spreading across miles of scorched earth. State troopers marked coordinates with colored flags that the wind tore loose before the hour was over. Ultra runners from other states volunteered, running 50-mile loops of their own, retracing her last signal, trying to feel what she might have felt when she left the trail. But the desert was merciless. It erased tracks faster than anyone could follow them. Then, 3 days into the search, a pilot spotted something strange, a scrap of white fluttering against a mesquite branch miles from the course. When rangers hiked to it, they realized it was another torn page from Lena's journal, dirt-creased, sun-bleached, but unmistakably hers. The ink shimmered faintly in the heat. It read, "I can still hear the crowd, but there's no one here." At first, no one knew what to make of it. They logged the GPS, bagged the paper, and moved on. But that was only the beginning. A day later, another page turned up, this time wedged under a rock near an old service road. "The sun moves wrong. I've been running west for hours, but it won't set." By the end of the week, they'd found 6 pages in total, each one farther from the last, stretching in a rough curve across the canyons. To some, it looked random. To others, it looked like breadcrumbs. Detective Mara Ellison arrived from Reno on the 8th day, 38. Practical, with a reputation for finding the unfound, she'd handled hikers, pilots, missing hunters, but something about this case was different. The tone of those pages bothered her. The writing wasn't desperate. It was observant, detached, almost scientific. Lena wasn't panicking. She was describing something. Ellison spent her first night in the field tent, laying the discovery sites on a topographic map. The pattern wasn't linear, it curled inward, a slow spiral tightening toward a blank area on the survey sheet where the elevation data faded out. "What's here?" she asked the ranger leaning over her shoulder. He shrugged. "Nothing mapped. Locals call it Echo Basin. Wind does strange things down there." Online, theories were already boiling over. Reddit threads dissected each page. Some said Lena had stumbled into a mirage loop. Others blamed traffickers or cults using the ultramarathon route as cover. A late-night radio host interviewed a local Navajo elder who spoke of Echo Basin, a hollow in the desert where sound bends back on itself, and travelers who enter hear their own footsteps chasing them. "It is not a place for running," he warned quietly. "It is a place for listening." Back in the field, a volunteer found the 9th page lodged in a rock crevice near a dry gully. It was darker than the others, smeared with something oily, later confirmed as sunscreen mixed with trace blood. The writing ran off the edge mid-sentence. As if torn in motion, it read, "I found the others' tracks. They circle back." That night, Ellison listened to the recovered GoPro audio on loop inside her SUV. There was no video, just sound, a steady rhythm of breathing, the crunch of gravel, and a strange undertone beneath the wind. At times, Lena's voice whispered, too low to understand. Ellison slowed the playback, boosting frequencies until words began to separate from the static. Fragments only. "Keep moving. Not west. Behind me." She felt her stomach tighten. The sound of footsteps echoed after each whisper, first in sync, then delayed, as if something else was pacing her. The following morning, the wind shifted, scattering sand over the last remaining markers. The helicopters circled lower, blades throwing dust over the tents. Search dogs grew restless. Every signal faded. By the 3rd week, command officially called it lost in terrain. The press moved on. The race directors issued condolences. The desert swallowed the tents, the flags, the footprints. But before leaving, Ellison slipped a single envelope into her case file. On the front, in careful block letters, she wrote, "Brooks, L." Inside were all 9 pages. The only pieces of a story no one could finish. She told herself it was standard procedure. Yet that night, back in her apartment, she unfolded the first page and read the words again under lamplight. The horizon isn't where it should be. Outside, the wind was rising through the power lines, low and rhythmic, like breath between footsteps. Years later, when the desert finally shifted again, it gave her back something no one expected. It began with rain, the first real downpour the Great Basin had seen in a decade. For 3 days the desert bled, gullies carving new paths through sand that hadn't moved since the race. When the flood subsided, it left behind a new landscape, jagged ravines, uprooted mesquite, and a faint, exposed trail that hadn't existed before. A lone hiker following one of those newly cut washes noticed a flash of color half buried beneath silt, something that didn't belong to the earth, a faded orange strap, frayed at the edges. When rangers dug it free, the sand fell away to reveal a backpack, weathered, coated in clay, but intact, the name tag stitched to the back read Brooks, L. Inside, everything was sealed as if waiting: a GoPro camera, a waterproof pen, and what remained of a notebook, just the spine, with pages torn clean away. The air inside the bag still smelled faintly of sunscreen and dust. Forensic teams sealed it in evidence containers and sent it to Reno, where digital forensics specialist Dr. Riya Patel took the camera into her lab. She'd restored hard drives from avalanches, floods, even wildfires, but never something that had slept 7 years in desert sand. The camera powered on after 2 attempts. The footage played in flickers, corrupted by heat and time. The first clips were routine. Lena jogging through blinding light, panting into the microphone, her breathing steady. But then, in the final file, something changed. The tone of the wind deepened, and the sky darkened to a strange bronze hue. Lena's voice came through faintly, as though she were talking to herself. "It's looping," she said. "I keep seeing the same cairn." The camera turned to a ridge of pale white rock. The wind roared louder, carrying sand like ash. She took another step forward, and the lens caught a shimmer in the distance. A silhouette that seemed to move when she moved, running parallel but separate, as if made entirely of reflected light. Then motion blur swallowed the frame. The camera jolted, hit the ground, and the audio fractured into static. But the file didn't end there. In the metadata, Patel found something impossible: power cycles. Multiple. The GoPro had turned itself on and off again after Lena disappeared, at irregular intervals over several years. News broke overnight. Missing runner's camera recovered after 7 years. Within hours, the footage was everywhere. Online sleuths dissected it frame by frame. Some claimed they saw a second figure beside her. Others said it was a mirage caused by heat distortion. A few slowed the footage until the shapes seemed to multiply. Runners made of light, circling her in the haze. Lena's parents pleaded for the video to be taken down. But the internet never rests. The comments filled with speculation, ghosts, portals, military testing. For the first time since 2015, the Great Basin's name was back in headlines. And with it, Detective Mara Ellison, now retired, was asked to return as a consultant. She'd never stopped keeping Lena's file near her desk. When she saw the new footage, she recognized the same calm tone, the same composure. Lena hadn't been delirious. She'd been documenting. In the lab, Patel turned her attention to the physical evidence. Microscopic analysis of the journal fragments revealed something unexpected: trace amounts of titanium dioxide, a reflective compound used in road marking paint. It wasn't naturally occurring in desert sand. Even more curious, the ink on the journal pages contained the same additive, the kind used to enhance visibility under light. It meant every page Lena wrote had been designed, consciously or not, to reflect when light hit it from the right angle. Patel looked up from the microscope and said quietly, "If she was leaving breadcrumbs, they were meant to be seen at night." Ellison drove back out to Echo Basin, the place she swore she'd never return. The air felt different after the flood, cooler, almost metallic. She knelt at the edge of the wash where the backpack had been found, holding one of the laminated pages under her flashlight. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the ink shimmered faintly, the words glowing pale silver in the beam. Somewhere in that brief shimmer, she thought she could almost see Lena's handwriting forming the letters again, as if the desert itself remembered. She switched off the light and stared into the dark horizon where the basin dipped away into shadow. 7 years gone. And still the trail wasn't finished. If Lena was leaving breadcrumbs, she chose the kind that only shine when light hits them right. The helicopter circled low over the canyons as dawn spilled across the Great Basin. For the first time in 7 years, the search wasn't about recovery. It was about understanding. Mara Ellison stood beside Dr. Riya Patel, both strapped into the open hatch, watching the pale ridges unfold beneath them like ribs of a sleeping giant. Below, a small convoy of jeeps followed the dry race trail, scanning with LiDAR and thermal arrays. The plan was simple. Overlay Lena's page discovery coordinates, cross-reference with the new topography revealed after the floods, and see what the desert had hidden in plain sight. The data came back strange. Lines of elevation formed faint depressions that didn't match the natural slope of erosion. When Patel processed the drone's second sweep, she froze. On her monitor, the shapes assembled into a near-perfect spiral, kilometers wide, curving inward toward a single hollow at its center. "It's not random," she murmured. "Every page led to this." They set up camp by noon on the edge of the spiral's outer ring. The air shimmered with heat, and the sand seemed to hum underfoot. Using ground-penetrating radar, Patel mapped the subsurface minerals, silica, iron, and something metallic she couldn't immediately identify. "It's like a mirror buried under dust," she said. They followed the spiral on foot, each curve descending a little deeper until the ground leveled into a wide basin. At its heart lay a sinkhole half covered in cracked salt and shining flecks of quartz. When the sun reached its zenith, the light refracted through the minerals and filled the hollow with silver fire. For a few minutes, the entire basin glowed, an immense natural lens reflecting the sky onto its own walls. As the glare settled, Mara saw movement inside. Shadows rippled along the walls, distorted outlines that shifted when they did. It was the same effect captured on Lena's GoPro. Silhouettes, shaped by refracted light, appearing alive, running in circles that had no end. "That's what she saw," Mara whispered. The mirage of her own motion. Patel climbed down first, boots crunching against the brittle salt. The air in the sinkhole was cool, laced with the faint smell of ozone. Near one corner, something fabric-like glimmered through the dust. She brushed the sediment aside, revealing fragments of torn athletic gear, the same synthetic we've used in marathon jerseys, and next to it, half buried in crystallized mud, a waterproof notebook. The cover had fused to the pages, melted by heat or pressure. They carried it carefully to the shade, slicing the spine open with a scalpel. Most of the writing had dissolved into ghostly streaks of ink. Except for one page near the center, a single line remained, burned clear through the paper, as if seared by sunlight focused through glass. "The race turns in on itself." Patel exhaled slowly. "It's literal," she said. "This entire formation is one continuous curve." If she kept running along the visual horizon, she would have circled the basin endlessly, thinking she was heading forward. She ran a simulation, projecting light paths through the basin's mineral composition. The data confirmed it. The silica and metallic dust created what she called a feedback mirage, a phenomenon where heat and reflection bend the horizon so completely that distance loops back on itself. "It's a perfect optical trap," she explained. "A runner could chase her own reflection forever." Mara looked down at the hollow, her hand tight around the envelope of Lena's recovered pages. In the shimmering light, she read one aloud. The sun moves wrong. I've been running west for hours. But it won't set. The words echoed faintly against the walls, bouncing back as if the basin itself remembered the voice that had first spoken them. She thought about Lena's discipline, her drive to finish, to push forward no matter what. It wasn't madness that kept her running. It was faith. The same willpower that defined her as an athlete became the thing that trapped her. Mara felt a knot form in her throat. She wasn't lost, she said quietly. She was following what she thought was the path home. Patel looked up from her instruments. She might have realized it near the end. The final note. The race turns in on itself. That's her understanding the loop. Above them, the afternoon light began to shift again, breaking through thin clouds and scattering across the quartz. The silhouettes returned, running endlessly along the mirrored curve. One shadow seemed to move differently, slower, as if pausing to look back toward the surface. Mara stepped closer to the rim, her own reflection stretching beside it. For an instant, she couldn't tell which outline belonged to her and which to Lena. The wind rose suddenly, lifting loose sand into the basin, erasing footprints almost as fast as they appeared. Patel shouted something over the roar, but the sound bent strangely, coming from behind instead of beside her. The acoustics were impossible. The same effect locals had once called the echo of the basin. When the gust passed, silence dropped like a curtain. Mara stood at the rim, pages clutched to her chest, staring into the sinkhole glowing with the pale, unsteady shimmer of running light. She whispered, "You finished, didn't you?" But the basin wasn't done speaking, and its final message would turn the whole story inside out. For months after the expedition, the desert was silent again, still, vast, pretending nothing had ever happened. The wind swept over the Great Basin's skeletal ridges, smoothing every footprint, every mark of human interference. It was as if the land was restoring its own equilibrium, erasing the story that had tried to reveal itself. Then, one afternoon, a survey drone flying a routine mineral scan over Echo Basin caught something unusual, a sudden flare of light, not from metal, not from glass, but from the ground itself. At first, the operator dismissed it as lens glare, another trick of the sun, but as he adjusted the angle, the reflection steadied, revealing faint geometric lines that shifted into something deliberate. Patel was called in to review the data. She filtered the wavelength scatter, enhancing contrast until the shapes came into focus. Across the cracked basin floor, written in shallow, perfect precision, were 3 words: "I stopped running." The message wasn't fossilized. It was fresh, the edges of the carvings still sharp enough to catch shadow. The grooves were lined with microscopic traces of carbon dust, and when tested, the residue matched exactly to Lena Brooks' GoPro casing. Patel ran the test twice, then a third time. The result didn't change. By the week's end, a new expedition flew back to the site. Under the blazing noon sun, the letters appeared again, shimmering like silver threads woven through the sand. Step a few feet to the side, and they vanished, swallowed by the glare. Only from the right angle, and only at the right moment, could the words be seen at all. Rusk would have called it coincidence. One more desert illusion, but Patel couldn't. The timing, the location, the precision, none of it fit chance. When she reviewed the metadata from Lena's GoPro, she found a small, impossible detail. The camera's system logs recorded a final activation in 2018, 3 years after Lena's disappearance. It turned on during a regional ultramarathon that retraced the original Great Basin route, the same event that passed near Echo Basin. No footage was saved. The camera had powered on, remained running for 47 seconds, and powered off again. No one had been there. No hand could have pressed the button. In her report, Patel wrote it clinically: environmental activation via mineral reflection and static charge possible. But privately, she told Mara something different. Sometimes light doesn't fade, she said. Sometimes it just waits to be seen again. Scientists called the basin's phenomenon light entrapment, the ability of silica and metal dust to store and refract luminous energy, creating what looked like motion, memory, even presence. But locals along the Nevada backroads gave it another name, the runner's reflection. They said if you stood near the basin at dusk, when the heat rose off the ground like glass, you could see her, a faint figure gliding along the curve of the spiral, never tiring, never turning, running toward a sun that never sets. Reporters came for a while, chasing the legend. Pilots claimed to see glimmers from the air. Then the headlines faded again, and the desert kept its rhythm, silent, patient, endless. Mara Ellison went back once more that summer, driving alone through the canyon roads. The old journal pages folded in her jacket. She reached Echo Basin just before sunset. The air shimmered in waves. Standing at the rim, she saw the faint words etched into the earth, catching the last streaks of light. I stopped running. Her boots sank into the powdery crust as she stepped closer. She knelt, brushed the dust from one letter, and whispered, "You finished when you were ready." The wind lifted her voice and sent it swirling down into the hollow. For a heartbeat, she could have sworn she heard another voice whisper the same words back. Weeks later, she delivered the restored journal to Lena's parents in Oregon. It was bound carefully, its surviving pages preserved under thin layers of UV-resistant glass at the Nevada State Museum. The journal became the centerpiece of a small exhibit titled Echo of a Race. The pages rest beneath mirrored glass so that visitors have to move to find the right angle of light before the words appear, ghostly, silver, still alive in motion. The ink seems to shift when read aloud, the letters glowing faintly as if running across the page. The placard beneath the display reads, "Recovered fragments from the 2015 Great Basin Ultra. Author, Lena Brooks." There's no mention of the spiral, no mention of Echo Basin, only a quiet line at the bottom. Donated in memory by the Ellison family. Every year on October 9th, the day she vanished, someone leaves a single blank page at the museum door. No writing, no name. Just a clean sheet of white paper that catches the afternoon sun and glows for a moment before fading again. Maybe she never vanished. Maybe she finished somewhere light and horizon finally met and kept running into the sunset we can't see. In the end, that's how her story settles, not in tragedy, but in motion, wind over stone, footsteps dissolving into sand, a race that no longer needs a finish line, and somewhere, in that trembling shimmer where light folds time into itself, maybe she's still there, still running, still free. Every trail tells a story, but some stories never reach the finish line. Don't let Lena's fade. Subscribe to keep her voice. And every runner who never came home, alive on the trail.